When Amy Griffin's memoir, The Tell, came out earlier this year, it created a lot of buzz. It was endorsed by big names. It was picked by Oprah's book club. The memoir tells Amy's story. She's a billionaire from Texas who used psychedelics to recover memories of childhood sexual abuse. But then, a New York Times investigation is raising some big questions about whether it's all true. So, where does this story go from here? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. To get into all of this, Nathan Maharaj is here. Sookfong is back on the show. Hello, both of you.
Hello.
Hey, Elamin.
Nice to have you here. Listen, there's a lot to get into, from the reliability of drug-assisted memory recovery to the fact-checking to the cozy friendships, shall we say, between billionaires at the center of the book's publicity machine. But Nathan, I think maybe we need to begin by just getting a Cole's Notes version of what's in this memoir, which I should say, published by Penguin Random House. I am also published by Penguin Random House. So is Sookfong. But who is Amy Griffin, and what is the story here?
Oh boy, talk about cozy. So the way it was marketed, this is a story about a woman who uncovers a secret of her past. She's successful. She's an athlete. She's becomes a successful in adulthood. But there's always something at her back. And so through MDMA-assisted therapy, which is not cleared by the FDA. She uncovers these memories of sexual assault at the hands of a teacher back in Amarillo, Texas. And that kind of brings us to where we are now.
That's so okay. Now you're caught up, and then something happens. I just want to play a clip. It's a clip of Amy Griffin. She's talking at a book, like an Oprah book event, book club event, and she's talking about what it feels like to be questioned before the New York Times piece was published.
I believe myself first. That's what the book is. I didn't need anyone else to believe me. And the writing of the book, all the iterations of it, all the thousands of hundreds of thousands of hours of word choice was to get to that place.
That is Amy Griffin. She says, I believe myself first. After that, the New York Times investigates, and they publish an investigation. They find a whole bunch of reasons why she might not be as believable as she says, including the fact that Amy Griffin and her husband were investors in a pharma company focused on MDMA therapy. The drug she claimed helped her, so there's a bit of a conflict of interest there. But also, they went to her hometown, and they couldn't find anyone to corroborate her story. But they found another woman whose story is very similar to the one that Amy claims is hers. Jen, when you read that investigation in the Times, what jumped out at you from that investigation?
A few things. I mean, like, I've written memoir, I've edited memoir. Memoir is always sort of muddy, right? Like, I think everyone kind of expects that. Nobody accurately remembers, the argument over gravy at Thanksgiving 15 years ago,
Speak
right?
for
Like,
yourself,
nobody.
But I understand. Yeah.
I hold a grudge forever. But I think in this case, when the author is writing about what is actually a very serious crime, and it's an allegation that carries life-changing consequences for everybody involved. I mean, I think accuracy does matter, and especially if that author is one of the wealthiest and most connected women in the world, especially if she received a $1 million advance for that book, as she did. This isn't a book that anyone was expecting to just sell like 12 copies. Like, everybody knew it was going to sell from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And in that case, I think that accuracy really does matter in this particular memoir.
I want to just read the statement that Amy Griffin put out. So it should be said, Amy declined to speak with the New York Times and other media outlets. And then when the Times sent her a lawyer a long list of questions to fact check their story, this is what the lawyer responded with. They said that the mere sending of this document has caused additional trauma and extreme physical and emotional harm to a survivor of sexual assault, which is inexcusable. Nathan, I want to play you a clip of the columnist Maureen Callahan. She argues that the real people who Amy Griffin represents in her memoir, like the teacher she claimed abused her, should take legal action.
I hope these people sue the shit out of Amy Griffin for defamation and damages. I really, really, really do. Because trust me, an Amy Griffin thinks that her billions of dollars and her powerful husband and her powerful lawyers make her bulletproof. But there is a real groundswell now of people who doubt her story.
Nathan, that's a pretty intense thing to say. I think like it's an intense thing for that columnist to say, but there's obviously a lot of anger directed towards Amy Griffin herself. But what kind of steps, because just to return to the publishing world here, what kind of steps should the publisher of a memoir like this take to make sure that the story is as true as it can confirm in the first place?
Well, what they should do is certainly above any pay grade I've visited. But what I imagine Penguin Random House would have done, I mean, Whitney Frick is the executive in charge of the Dial Press, which is the imprint within Penguin Random House that published this. This is not her first rodeo. She is, in fact, a designer and choreographer of many a rodeo. So Penguin Random House has the institutional knowledge, aside from Ms. Frick, to having published under Riverhead Books. They published James Frey, the quintessential example of the memoir that turned out to not be exactly
You're talking about A Million Little Pieces. That's the one that Oprah endorsed, and then later it was like, oh, maybe not all the things in A Million Little Pieces ended up being true.
Yeah, and it was embarrassing for Oprah. So it's hard to say what a publisher should do, but certainly Miss Frick's comment to the Times was book publishers are not investigators, and that's true. But to Jen's point, you're going to say stuff's going to go out into the world. It's going to have an impact. I am so curious about the contract between Amy Griffin and the Dial Press, because there's no way that nobody at Penguin Random House sat down Whitney Frick and said, and if it's false, what's our plan? And that absolutely, I expect, would be in the contract somewhere.
Yeah, I think the thing that maybe people don't necessarily understand about publishing is that like the legal's got to read it. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, the legal department of a giant publisher like this would go, okay, we can handle the outcome of, whatever legal repercussions will come from this book. But Jen, again, you're an editor and you've written a memoir and you've published memoir but also you've edited memoir. Let's talk about, based on that experience, what would an editor do with a draft like this one when it comes in?
I just want to point out also that like nobody involved in this process, as Nathan said, is inexperienced. Amy Griffin did have a ghostwriter, and I believe it's one of the ghostwriters who worked on Britney Spears's book. So everybody knows what they're doing here, right? So there are several levels of like editorial eyeballs on this book. So when you're working on a book like this, there are multiple drafts. You don't see it once. You don't see it for 30 seconds. You work on it for a really long time. And you see multiple drafts. And if you see a passage that you think is like legally concerning, you go to the author and you say, listen, how can we change this? How important is this passage to your book? What can we do to protect you, to protect us? And that query will continue over multiple drafts if it doesn't change. At the end of the day, when you're at your final draft, an editor will flag those passages for legal to read. So I don't believe any of this did not happen with this book. I think all of this process occurred, especially given that it's a serious crime she's writing about, especially given the number of copies they definitely expected to sell of it.
Just a reminder here, like her original draft had the real teacher's name in this. The New York Times sort of reported that this guy's life has kind of been ruined in the sort of aftermath of this book coming out. So if a very experienced editor flags all those concerns, like why do you think this book went to print as is?
Well, money.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to like come up with like there must be some other reason, and I always forget.
Pockets.
I forget about that
pockets
one.
that money's in.
I forget about that reason quite often. But I'll let you continue, Jen.
Okay, let me just say, if you're the editor who acquired this book and you guys paid $1 million in advance, and you think, this is like really legally concerning, maybe we should pull this book. Do you want to be the editor that goes into that editorial meeting that says to your bosses, we paid $1 million for this book and I think we should pull it? Like, honestly, like
No,
that is.
But maybe
no.
pause, maybe move it to the next year. You know what I mean? Like you could, there are other tools, right? Like they could presumably use in this kind of thing.
They could have, but I also think that the influence and the money that Amy Griffin has played a big part in that. Like she obviously knows a lot of people. They know they're going to sell a lot of books. And if she absolutely refuses at the end of the day to change something, the liability ultimately lies with her and her story, right? So.
Well, it's also one thing for the life of the book to be what it was before it's published, but the expectations on the book, Nathan, are, as it's kind of coming out, all these gigantic people are lining up, getting ready to promote it. We're talking about Reese Witherspoon. We're talking about Gwyneth Paltrow. We're talking about Jenna Bush Hager. We're talking about Oprah. Like those are all people who like sort of exist in Amy Griffin's just general social world. This is like a publisher's dream to have all those people say, this is the book that I would like everybody to buy. Do you think that got in the way of maybe the critical thinking necessary and the due diligence that was necessary to sort of see this book maybe responsibly out in the world?
You know what? You to say it got in the way is to posit that the critical thinking was still in the room to be obstructed.
Yeah.
Listen, the book pitch went out with a list of celebrities that Amy Griffin has a personal relationship with, who have access to a large audience and who would be amenable to promoting it. And it was this epic list of like everybody you need. Yes, Gwyneth was on there. Go on and on. There are no sure things in publishing, but when an author shows up and says, I've got this juicy story, and these are the people who'll promote it. Yeah, sure. Here's $1 million. We can make that back a few times over. And so the critical thinking, I'm sure people thought about this critically, but also the profit and loss statement on this book was very tempting. Especially with the not even written, like this book was pitched with like, I'm a face, these are other faces, let's go make some money.
That's not normally the pitch process for a book, but I guess when that comes in, it's a little bit hard to sort of look away from that.
Jen would know better than I would, but I understand this is unusual.
Well, Jen, what's your take on this? The idea that like all these heavy sort of powerhouse names come along with the pitch, come along with the idea like, hey, they will stand behind this book when it goes out. How much does that influence, the care and the due diligence that you apply to this book?
Oh, I think tons. I think editors and publishers get dazzled by celebrity too. It's easy to get like sort of blinded by it. Yeah. But I will say, like when we're talking about acquiring a book, we often ask the question, what kind of platform does the author have? This is a platform times like 5,000. Like this is crazy. Like when people ask me what my platform is, I'm like, man, I have 3,000 Instagram followers. Yeah. I know Elamin, and that's what I say.
That's not gonna get you much, buddy. That's not gonna get you.
Well, it gets you something. Okay. But I'm just gonna say, it's not Oprah, it's not Reese Witherspoon. Like this is like, this would completely bowl me over if this pitch had gotten my inbox, which it never would have. It would have completely bowled me over.
I think, listen, if you get this book that you're working on, you sort of try to get it across the line. Like, is there a certain point where you say, if it did seem too good to be true, why not just publish this as a work of fiction based on real events? That is like a tool they could also use in this particular case, Jen. What do you think they didn't resort to that particular tool?
Well, I'm going to repeat my answer from earlier because of the money. I think that
I keep forgetting that thing, I really do.
It's the money.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about why we watch like true crime documentaries, why we want to know about the real life ugly truths that occur in the world. That's why, in this case, a really like scandalous nonfiction memoir would sell better than it as a novel. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, there are a lot of novels out there about like childhood trauma. Not to minimize that, but there are a lot of novels out there like that. But an actual like memoir by a really high profile, wealthy person with a lot of famous friends, that only happens like once in a lifetime.
Is that our bar for what we want out of memoir, Nathan, at this point? Like, is that what the genre is for? Like, does truth matter in memoir? Or kind of like, what we're looking for is like, give me a line that I can just like, I'll just say this one line and then everyone know that's what the book is about and it'll be really buzzy for 6 months.
It's such an interesting genre because it's not, memoir is it's your best recollection of Turkeygate 2016, who spilled the gravy.
Dude, huge year. Yes.
Huge year. Still living in its shadow. It's understood that, autobiography carries some more weight. Biography, certainly writing about somebody else's life, carries weight. Memoir is kind of assumed to have artistic license to it, at least insofar as the memory is an artistic creation. Mm-hmm. But there's only so far you can stretch it. And one of the critical factors in this is the drug aspect, that the memory of this author was quote unquote recovered by the use of not formally approved drugs, a drug therapy.
Yeah.
So she used MDMA to recover these memories. So yeah, do readers need truth? Like I think they do. They want the memory of the author, but what we get to in this particular book is that memory is pretty questionable in how it came to how the author came to recall it.
That doesn't make me feel any better about the genre of memoir, though. Like I sort of hear that answer and say, okay, the idea that there's some creative license to be taken, I understand that. I wrote one of those, and I had a couple people say, I remember that a little bit differently. I say, well, that's as such, we live different lives.
Yeah,
that's expected. That's a part of this. But Jen, surely there's got to be limitation to how far you can stretch the idea of memoir. Isn't there?
I believe it. I mean, I'm here to say my memoir is 100% accurate. No, it's not. No one expect that from me. I will say that I think the reason accuracy does matter to a point is that we use memoir as a way of connecting with other people. We tell our stories so that other people can relate to them and that we can, shed light on things that maybe we haven't thought about before. And if the truth is completely devoid from that process, then what are we even doing? What are we connecting over? And to me, then it does really matter.
I'll tell you this. I don't think this is the last conversation we are going to be having about The Tell by Amy Griffin, but I'm grateful that we had this one because I think the next one is going to be perhaps more dramatic, but we'll wait to see what happens with that. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, of course. This has been wonderful. Nathan Maharaj is the Director of Content Marketing at Rakuten Kobo and a lifelong bookseller. He's in Toronto. Jen Sookfong Lee is an editor at ECW Press, and she just released her latest novel, The Hunger We Passed Down, which is published by Penguin Random House. She's in Burnaby, BC. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We'll see you tomorrow.